Hello, this is Michael Hexter. Welcome to Politics 2100 here on YouTube. So this episode I'm calling Centrists, right wing, capital are trying to erase memories of COVID and build back better mini social democracy. So this is another effort to try to condense a lot into a title here. Um, but this is the immediate trigger, let's say, or um, reminder for me of this idea um, is a segment on Joe Scarborough. I believe it was from Monday of this week, where he goes on a rant against woke white um, progressives. Okay, what he calls woke white progressives, and he basically tries to saddle them with all of the problems and more of the Democrats and of the United States, even including crime waves and of various kinds, or just the perception of crime waves, and then some actual crime statistics. So, and and I'm going to put a link in the description box of a good analysis of this by the Majority Report, by Emma and Matt of the Majority Report. But I wanted to take a further step with this because to get lost in the details of Scarborough's um, tangle of accusations, most of them are false, and is to sort of lose sight of the political game that's going on, beyond simply Joe Scarborough being who he is, and being sort of center right person on MSNBC, former Republican congressman, um, and supporter of Newt Gingrich previously, so forth and so on. But anyway, he, is supposedly, because he's on MSNBC, supposedly has the ear of Democrats and is trying to make a plea for them to, what I am calling here, or I'm saying is he's trying to erase the memory of COVID and build back better mini social democracy. So we've had in the last couple of years a period of just very slight respite because of the various COVID support packages and the public health measures involved in that. Also, just simply changes in the private sector um, handling of basically people being able to work from home if they can. We've had basically sort of a crack in the work discipline for Americans, and capital is not happy with this crack, this ray of light, so to speak, um, in the workaday lives of tens of millions of Americans. Now, this last couple of years has been awful for some, and I'm not claiming that in many, and there are many orphans, there are many people who've suffered COVID, and but within that, there's also been this sort of glimpse of a world where government is somewhat more caring, or there's allowance for people to have free time, and also to control to some degree their workspace, their work lives, and also children being pulled out of poverty because of the child tax credit. So there's a whole bunch of support measures that were temporarily there, and then were proposed as more long-term things in the Build Back Better agenda, which then the Democrats failed to pass. And they failed to pass because of their very poor strategy, and not because of progressives, not because of this supposedly white woke. Now, what makes Joe Scarborough so incredibly psychotic, or desperate, maybe is the better word, but desperately delusional, manipulative, discourse is that lie-filled discourse is that the leaders, the primary leaders of political leaders of our the progressives, the people who are pushing for things like Build Back Better or for more COVID support, are generally leaders or people of color who are women or or Bernie Sanders anyway. But anyway, that this picture of this sort of pointy-headed college educated woke progressive is only has very marginal truth to it. And in this segment, actually, he tries to use Al Sharpton, who is also not a progressive, to be his foil, to try to explain that these people are totally out of touch, and that all the problems of the United States, including, he also lards on defund the police, which is a slogan that I think is a terrible slogan, but it never was implemented really as a systematic plan by any segment of the Democratic Party. No one can be, only very, fragmentarily is this tried in certain areas of, certain local jurisdictions, but even in a marginal kind of way of public safety reform. But anyway, he tries to blame them for everything. And this is again, I'm calling it a desperate move to try to erase the memories of this moment of freedom, this moment of support from government, and the potential for more support from government that the Democrats then failed to implement because of their being tied up in Republican ideologies, basically, or the neoliberal right-wing ideologies about the role of government in society. And so anyway, I think and the reason why I use these generic terms like mini social democracy is that it's not just attached to this Build Back Better agenda, or that happens just to be one implementation or one possible implementation of something that is really a longer term project of, I guess, I could call it, or it's being called by Harvey K. And others, economic Bill of Rights. So anyway, this is something that has potentially great appeal to the American people, and it's something that the media pundits like Chuck Scarborough is trying to convince people that they really don't want, that it's the brainchild of people who don't understand them, and that it's, when in fact the opposite is true. For instance, that they're also running desperately away from, and as Emma Vigeland points out in the segment from Majority Report, that there's a huge plummeting of support for the Democrats in exactly the people who were receiving the child tax credit, and then it was allowed to lapse because of, among other things, they allowed Joe Manchin to dictate to them what should be in Build Back Better, or what should be tried to be implemented, and in a way that suggests that, and this is something that's also discussed in that segment that I'm going to link to, that Joe Biden really didn't want these things, that it's not something that, this is a problem that I have had, and sort of the progressive saying this is really Joe Biden's agenda. I mean, it's the agenda that he campaigned on, but it's not necessarily the agenda that's next to his heart. And Joe Biden has throughout his career been someone who has been very enthusiastic about imposing labor discipline on people by saddling them with debt, among other things, and by making them and by closing down the potential that was glimpsed in the 1960s and 70s for a government that was more supportive of and more transformative of society, so forth and so on. Instead, a government that basically is the ally of predatory capital interests, which let's say that's the tendency of capital to be a predator on ordinary people's resources. And anyway, so this and this is also so. And anyway, there's also this rant by Joe Scarborough is just part of a general project that I'm pointing out that is happening, where the centrists of the Democratic Party and then also the right wing are trying to purge themselves of any of the sins or any failings that they have. Also, put all the social problems on the relatively powerless progressives in Congress and in society more generally at large. And I mean, another dimension of this is also just the culture war. So the culture war papers over the economic, the desire to play the culture war that really is bipartisan. If you include the if you exclude the more left-wing Democrats from it, but there is generally a wish to continue the sort of culture war rhetoric and to try to maneuver to try to create the image of the whatever party you are a part of being the more virtuous in terms of cultural values, so forth and so on, but trying to get people to ignore the pressing economic issues that were temporarily loosened by government support, and then now they're also trying to erase that. And this also explains, this framework explains also the dropping of public health measures in the face of Omicron, and now Omicron 2 that's breaking right now. That is also, public health has come to mean some measure of social democracy, some measure of dirigisme, of government directing society to some degree. And again, it was never implemented in the United States by no stretch of the imagination, anywhere close to the way the Chinese Communist government in mainland China has done, or even South Korea, which is not nearly as directive and as oppressive as the communist government in mainland China. But anyway, so this. But still, public health efforts to help people either by subsidies, by various programs, also healthcare support. So all of these things were things that were being cut immediately because the sound is being heard. The Chamber of Commerce, essentially, you could say, is telling both parties, look, we have to get away from these things. It doesn't matter if there's a pandemic or there's not. I don't care about the pandemic. I don't care about the virus. Let's wish that it's going away. Let's hope for the best, and let's just let it rip, so to speak. So I think that you can identify this anti-social democracy, mini social democracy, COVID version push also being linked to this anti-public health push. So it's not so inexplicable in a way that that governments are essentially collapsing in front of the virus, or in terms of potential let's say not say the governments are collapsing in terms of in all their functions, but they are crumpling in terms of their public health initiatives, because they are just simply trying to play ball with commercial interests. So anyway, so that's kind of a quick, or maybe not so quick, but anyway, summary of what I think is the positioning going on, and also just introducing language I think that's a portable language that you can bring to a number of different contexts and not just focus on one particular commentator or one particular even a political actor or a political party, but it seems to be a project that has emerged after the shock, the COVID shock, and the COVID response of 2020, 2021. So anyway, if you have further thoughts about this or would like to discuss, the perspective I'm offering here, please do so in the comments. Please, if you like this video, please like, and also if you're enjoying Politics 2100 more generally, please subscribe, and I hope to see you in the next video.